and wider shelves to fit even the largest dishes. Trio, it's the most intriguing thing on the block. Sears, where else?
Mommy, try one time. Mommy, come.
No.
Come, hold my hand and come.
With a little expert advice from us, this working mom is protecting 3 generations of people she loves. All through her benefits plan at work.
Star Search is back, and the competition is better than ever. Yeah, baby! With all new comics, new dancers, and new singers.
Don't you ever go now.
5 stars. Join Arsenio for the Star Search semifinals, live CBS Friday. Bruce Springsteen.
One more for the folks out in TV land.
And the E Street Band. Friday at 9/8 Central, only on CBS.
The surprise movie hit of all time.
Big family news. You may stay.
It's now the biggest, fattest TV comedy hit in years.
How about today we skip the insults?
Or we could just do them fast. Your hair.
Your shoes.
Your girlfriend.
Hey, watch it.
It's the show everyone's talking about.
People are eating.
My Big Fat Greek Life, CBS Sunday after 60 Minutes.
Our interview with Saddam Hussein took place 2 days ago in Baghdad. We'd been told our chances of speaking with him had improved and that we would be picked up at our hotel when the time was right, which was exactly how it happened. Producer Jim Murphy and I were put in a car with curtained windows and 2 Iraqis in the front seat. We drove around for about 45 minutes, first one direction, then another. Finally, we were dropped in a house, then picked up by another car, put in a 3rd car, driven around the city east, west, north, and south again before we reached our final destination, the Republican Palace. I recognized the palace from just last month. We were reporting from here when the UN inspectors made a surprise visit. But you can't see much from outside the gates, and for security, you're not allowed to take pictures. The only way to see it is from space. This is Baghdad as seen from a satellite. A huge, sprawling city, bigger than Los Angeles. Tucked hard along the Tigris River is the old palace, the Republican Palace, apparently one of Saddam's favorites, built by the British just after World War I, when they took over what is now Iraq from the Turks. We were driven through the main gates, through several checkpoints, and with armed guards all around, we were finally taken into the palace itself, a place heavily bombed during the first Gulf War and now meticulously restored. About 2.5 hours after we left our hotel, just a few miles away, we were greeted by Saddam. He seemed thinner when we saw him 12 years ago. He seemed healthy, though a bit stiff, apparently from back problems. And in our interview, he made a proposal directly to President Bush. What is the most important thing you want the American people to understand at this important juncture of history?
First, convey to them that the people of Iraq are not the enemy of the American people. If the American people would like to know the facts as they are, through a direct dialogue, then I am ready to conduct a debate with the President of the United States, President Bush, on television. I will say whatever I have to say about American policy. He will have the opportunity to say whatever he has to say about the policy of Iraq. And this will be in front of the world, on television, in a direct, uncensored, honest manner. In front of, as I said, everyone. And then they will judge what is true and what is false.
This is new. You are suggesting, you are saying that you are willing, you are urging a debate with President Bush on television?
Yes, that is my proposal. On films, we see that the Americans are courageous. When challenged to a duel, they will not back down, just as the Arabs would not. This will be an opportunity for him to convince the world if he is committed to war. If he's convinced of his own position, this will be an opportunity for him to convince the world that he is right in making such a decision. It could also be an opportunity for us to tell the world our own side of the story and why we want to live in peace and security. I believe that it is the right of the American people, the Iraqi people, and the world that we show our evidence clearly so that they can see for themselves. So, why should we hide from the people? Why shouldn't we show them both perspectives? We, as presidents, President of the United States and President of Iraq. This is what I am calling for. We will either make peace, and this is what we hope for, and spare our people harm, or whoever decides anything other than peace will have to convince his own people with the facts. This is the gist of my proposal, my idea.
This is not a joke.
No. No. I call for this because war itself is not a joke.
Mr. President, where would this debate take place that you imagine?
The American president in America and Saddam Hussein, the president of Iraq in Iraq. And then the debate can be conducted through satellite.
So a satellite television debate.
Yes. And if Mr. Bush has another proposal, then we are prepared to listen. What is important is the idea.
Would you be prepared to come to the United Nations for this debate?
The most important thing is that our debate be heard in a normal and accurate way. And by this, I do not mean that I go and I make a speech at the United Nations and then that Mr. Bush will make his speech at the United Nations. That is not what I mean. What I mean is that we sit as we are sitting, you and I, now. I will address questions to him, and he will address questions to me. He will explain why he wants to go to war. I will explain why we are insistent on peace and we want to maintain peace. And we defend our honor and our sovereignty and our rights. So that the American people, the Iraqi people, and the other peoples of the world will hear us. Without tricks, without editing, without prepared speeches, people want to hear live and direct dialogue.
Well, this surprises me, but I want to make sure I understand.
The debate could be broadcast on American and Iraqi television in its entirety, and it should be broadcast live.
A live international debate via satellite?
Yes, of course.
How would this work? Who would moderate this debate?
You, Mr. Rather.
With respect, Mr. President, I have plenty of other problems. I've got enough problems already, but As soon as the White House heard of Saddam Hussein's proposal for a debate, it was immediately rejected. A spokesman called it not serious. During our interview, everything Saddam Hussein told us was being relayed with the help of his two translators sitting at the same table. It turns out that Saddam was not just speaking, but listening carefully to what they were saying. At one point, after President Hussein mentioned President Bush Sr., one of his translators called him Bush instead of Mr. Bush. Saddam Hussein interrupted him in mid-sentence.
And how Bush, the father...
I didn't say Bush. I said Mr. Bush. I am being historically accurate and showing him respect.
I understand his point. You want you to call him Mr. Bush.
I used not to, and this is a funny anecdote, address him as Mr. Bush when he was in power. But as soon as he left office, I referred to him as Mr. Bush. We believe that we should respect the humanity even of our enemy. That's why I refer to him as Mr. Bush.
Mr. President, I hope you will take this question in the spirit in which it's asked. First of all, I regret that I do not speak Arabic. Do you speak any English at all?
سيادة الرئيس أرجو have your coffee.
I have coffee.
الأمريكان يحبون القهوة.
Americans like coffee.
That's true, and this American likes coffee.
وأنا آسف لأنه لا أتقن اللغة الإنجليزية.
I am sorry. I do not speak English fluently.
أفهم بقدر ما أستطيع.
But I can understand to some extent.
Well, would you speak some English for me? Anything you choose.
Our language is Arabic.
هي العربية.
A footnote to what you just heard when Saddam Hussein corrected his interpreter, asking him to say Mr. Bush. A reminder that after the first President Bush left office, Saddam Hussein tried to have him assassinated, and today one of Saddam's own newspapers refers to the second President Bush as the son of the snake. In a moment, we ask Saddam about his plans for war.
60 Minutes 2, a CBS News magazine, continues in a moment. You can get a weekly preview of our stories by signing up for an email alert on cbsnews.com.
Continuing coverage of the club fire tragedy at 11.
They have as much of an interest in finding out who's responsible for lighting the fuse.
We're learning more about the pyrotechnic investigation. Plus, did a neighbor kill an elderly woman in the hallway of this Newport apartment just a block from the police station? New information live at 11.
Another cold, dry night. Good evening, I'm meteorologist Tony Petrarca. Quiet weather for now, but a snow potential on Friday. Will it be serious or just light? The 7-day Futurecast on the Night Beat.
Shattering news, Providence. At long last, it's here. The legendary story, the heart-grabbing music, the international phenomenon, the Phantom of the Opera, the award-winning musical event that has captured the imagination of theater-goers around the world. Now it's your turn to surrender to the music of the night. Now through March 23rd at the Providence Performing Arts Center. Tickets at the box office, all Ticketmaster outlets, or call 401-421-ARTS.
Eyewitness News is coverage you can count on. Only Eyewitness News has merged
its furniture showplace.
Saddam Hussein told us he hopes there won't be a war with the United States, but he certainly has been planning for one. In this part of our interview, the Iraqi leader shared some of his thoughts about war with the U.S. Those thoughts are shaped, some might even say warped, by Saddam's view of the situation today and of recent history. Saddam sees the world in his own terms and takes the same approach to interviews with television reporters. Saddam will allow only cameramen from Iraqi TV to record his interviews. He says this is for security reasons. We could not bring our own camera crews in, or even a tape recorder. The Iraqis provided cameras for our interview. They provided the interpreters to translate Saddam's remarks into English, and they provided us the tape of the interview hours after it was over. CBS translators here in New York carefully compared the official Iraqi translation with their own independent interpretation and found their translation of Saddam's remarks to be accurate. Those remarks include a surprising assessment of the outcome of the 1991 Gulf War and an equally surprising renunciation of the tactics that left Kuwait's oil fields in flames at the end of that war. If there is an invasion, will you set fire to the oil fields? Will you blow the dams for your reservoirs of water to resist the invasion?
Iraq does not burn its own wealth, and it does not destroy its own dams. We hope that this question is not going to be used by those who intend to attack us to cover their backs while they themselves destroy Iraq's dams and oil wells. Iraq will not destroy its oil or dams, but will use them and protect them for the benefit of the Iraqis.
Mr. President, Vice President Richard Cheney of the United States says that if and when an American-led army comes into Iraq, it will be greeted with music. It will be treated as an army of liberation. If Americans are not to believe that, why should they not believe that?
If the Iraqi army or any other army were to cross the Atlantic and occupy America, is it going to be received by the American people with music? I am categorically certain that no Iraqi will welcome any American when he is an occupier. But all the Iraqis will welcome any American who comes as a friend. That is why, now that you are here, you are being welcomed, even though you come from a country threatening to destroy Iraq. Haven't you seen the kind of welcome you've received by officials and ordinary citizens? You can roam about in the town, but if an American soldier is here as an occupier, he won't be received in this way. So as long as you are not a soldier, you are a guest, and a guest is always treated with respect. Any American, if they want to know the real position of the Iraqi people, they must ask themselves a question. In 1995, the Iraqi people elected Saddam Hussein president of Iraq, and in 2002, they re-elected him. And the percentage of the voting was, respectively, 99.6% and 100% in those two elections.
100%?
100%. This, I know, may sound strange to you, but even if you take out whatever portion you want to take out of that, then the ratio would remain high in favor of re-electing Saddam Hussein. Now, what does that mean? It means that the Iraqis have decided to take a patriotic stand under the circumstance of war and the blockade, in order to say to the foreign powers that are threatening Iraq, it is we, the people of Iraq, who decide our way, not you telling us what to do.
You mentioned 1990 and 91, the Gulf War. You fought the father, George Bush the first. He and the forces he led prevailed on the battlefield. Now you face the son, who has an even greater, even more modern, even more lethal military force aimed directly at your throat and heart. Why would you think that you could prevail this time on the battlefield? Or do you?
You know that in both cases, we did not cross the Atlantic to commit aggression against the United States, neither by land or sea or air. The officials in America are the ones who are talking about the intention of attacking Iraq. Isn't it a responsible thing, the moral thing, and the most basic thing to do, to warn the aggressor that if they attack us, we will not surrender? If we ask the question to any honest American, including you, Mr. Rather, let us suppose that during any time in the future, if another power comes to America, do you do nothing? I will answer. I will tell the Americans that if such a thing happens to you one day, do not surrender. Stand and defend your country and your dignity. And, as you know, we didn't commit aggression against America. America is the one who is daily killing our children, our women. As I'm talking to you, there are American planes in the south and the north dropping their bombs on the citizens and on their property. This happens daily. If there is a law in the world that says the stronger ones get their way, it means surrender to the law of the jungle. And we do not want to surrender to the law of the jungle. It is our duty to defend our country, so we will not surrender. Not to America, not to anybody else. Just a quick historical correction that might interest you and the American people.
في عام 91 لم يهزم العراق.
In 1991, Iraq was not defeated. But our army withdrew from Kuwait by our own decision. It's true, they left Kuwait under bombing, but when they were back inside Iraq, they were not defeated, and neither were the Iraqi people.
Mr. President, respectfully, a lot of Americans are going to hear that and say, what is this man talking about? Because all of those Iraqi tanks coming out of Kuwait with the turrets knocked out indicated a beaten army on the battlefield. The point is, I'm asking you to explain what you mean that you were not defeated in the 1990-91 war, because I can report to you with accuracy that overwhelmingly the American people believe that that was a resounding defeat for you and for Iraq.
دعني أجيبك على هذا السؤال.
Let me answer this.
أنتم تعرفون أهداف.
You know the goals of Bush the father, and you know he attacked us repeatedly after that. So why did he repeat his attack if we had been defeated? When there is military conflict, there is attack and there is retreat. And when we saw that Bush the father, the president, had mobilized 28 armies against us, when we saw that the whole world was in fact collaborating against us, we realized that we had to withdraw from Kuwait. We did not lose more than 10% of our equipment in all of the battles. That was the worst loss suffered by any of our units. So, we lost a battle, but we were not defeated. In what sense does Iraq threaten America? The Iraqi people are not the enemies of the American people. Mr. Rather, you are a well-informed man, and you know the battle is not over until the guns are quiet, and when the national will is bent to what the aggressor wants. It's not enough to have superiority in planes and missiles. In the final analysis, the guns will tell the tale of a courageous people defending themselves against the occupiers. This is a decision made by the people of Iraq. They will continue to commit themselves to the role that will make them respect themselves as well as others.
Mr. President, you say that knowing that poised on your border is a tremendous armada ready to deliver destruction and awe.
Yes, I understand, I hear, and I see. But the final truth will be decided by Allah on Iraqi soil. In Baghdad. I'm not talking about the fate of Americans in America, but the fate of Iraqis in Iraq, and the fate of anybody who attacks Iraq.
Mr. President, I appreciate your remembering that we met in 1990 and I interviewed you in this very building. Given the sober moment and the danger at hand, what are the chances this is the last time you and I will see each other?
Only Allah decides the fate of man. But the Almighty also says, man should prepare what is necessary here on earth. Then, I can see that in the future we will meet another time, no matter what happens or what takes place. And I hope that the Iraqi people and the American people will live in peace and have a relationship that expresses their national interests without one side harming the other.
60 Minutes 2 continues in a moment. You can log on to CBS.
The last time I spoke with Saddam Hussein was in 1990, just after he'd invaded Kuwait. And in many ways, it was much like this week's interview. We met in the same palace and talked through double translations. Saddam wore a suit instead of his military uniform, professed to be peace-loving, and regularly invoked God's will. He even challenged the elder President Bush to a debate. But the similarities end there. Back in 1990, Saddam really had no idea what was about to hit him. 5 months after we spoke, the U.S. led airstrikes against Iraq, and he was hit hard. Ground troops then forced his soldiers out of Kuwait. Sanctions followed, further crippling the country. Waves of arms inspectors have been in and out of Iraq. His army is now 1/3 the size it was before the Gulf War. In those same years, the U.S. military has become more powerful and more sophisticated. The forces now surrounding Iraq better understand desert warfare. They've studied Saddam's arsenal and military tactics, and the long stretches of desert that separate U.S. positions and Baghdad no longer seem as insurmountable as they once did. Americans have become determined and emboldened by the attacks of 9/11. We are less tolerant of our enemies. Despite all that, Saddam told us again this week that he will not leave Iraq. It is Saddam's unshakable view of himself that comes through most clearly in both my conversations with him. After a quarter of a century of power in Iraq, Saddam Hussein says he's as strong as ever. No matter that he's seen as a brutal leader, no matter that his country could be crippled and crushed in the months ahead, no matter that he may unleash biological and chemical weapons that could kill even his own people, Saddam Hussein judges victory by only one measure: his own survival. I'm Dan Rather. We'll be back next Wednesday with another edition of 60 Minutes 2. Coming up next year on CBS, 48 Hours Investigates. Here's Leslie Stahl.
Tonight, we have an exclusive for you. Robert Chambers, the man known as the Preppy Killer. He gives his first television interview. Robert Chambers was a young man of 21 when he was